Okay. Yes. Good day, everyone. So today's session will be a continuation of what we discussed from last week. I might not really quickly go to do a recap because we already have we're preparing to discuss more about different career path after this the AZ 900, and then we'll talk about how well you can navigate to, maybe you want to be a data scientist, or you want to be a cloud engineer, or a DevOps engineer, or a security engineer, or which one of the career paths you want to be, an analyst, talking about data and the rest of them. So we'll talk about that later on. Because of time, I will just go ahead and start from, continue from where we stop. So today we'll be talking about learning paths in management and governance. I mean, with management and governance, it's like you having a country and then having a government in place to take care of those countries. In as much as that, we'll talk about talk about the learning paths here online, and then these are the learning paths under governance. So we'll talk about cost management, which is the we'll talk about cost management, talk about pricing calculator, how you need to calculate your resources before you deploy or your infrastructure. We'll talk about governance and compliance, as we all know. Talk about blueprints, policies, resource log, service trust. We'll all talk about this, and then we'll talk about resource deployment tools. What are the tools used for deploying resources in Azure Cloud? We'll talk about all of this. We'll talk about monitoring tools, where after deploying all your infrastructure is working, is up and running, how do you monitor and manage your resources? Ensure that your resources are safe in the cloud. You don't just overspend. You need to check all of this, or you need to check if one of your services or your resources in the cloud is running out of space. The monitoring tool would help you drive down in as much as understanding how the monitoring tool work. And then let's talk about cost management. So in this chapter here, we'll describe the factors that affect cost management, and then we'll describe Azure cost management tool, like learning about the pricing calculator and stuff like that. So factors affecting Azure resources in the cloud. So what are the factors? There are three main factors. We have, I'll put this into two sessions. We have about 6 of them, but I'll discuss the first 3 here. One of the factors affecting cost is resource type here, and we'll talk about resource type. Consumption is part of the factors affecting cost, and then maintenance, how you maintain your resources in terms of monitoring, like I said. So let's talk about resource type. Resource type basically are the resource that you've been deployed in the cloud. This means that the amount of money you spend depending on the type of resource you are using. So another example that we talk about here is the consumption factors. Consumption factors determine the kind of what the pay-as-you-go model, the amount of resource you consume in one of the can be the driving cost here. So another thing we'll talk here again is the maintenance factor here affecting cost. So under the resource cost specific, I will talk about. It means that the amount of resources you spend in the and you use in the cloud. So let's say, for example, you have about 100 virtual machines. For example, 100 virtual machines can cost you more. It can cost you more than someone just buying just one virtual machine. So I mean, there are different factors that can affect cost here. And a key example, I would put this into perspective. Let's say your resource. Let's say you have a phone, for example, and in your phone you have data which is internet. So the amount of data you consume might determine the amount of resources you have on your phone. And then I will talk about the meter usage now. For example, a meter usage talk about it's like a tracker that tracks the amount of data you consume. Let's say, for example, in your home, you have your own meter where you buy data, you buy current to determine the amount of light resources, appliances you use in your home. This can determine the amount of cost, or can determine the amount of light you are consuming. So I'm just giving that into a simple example, for example, and then the cost determine how much you pay. Either you want to you are using basic, premium, or enterprise. I mean, enterprise is for a large organization where they have so many resources and they have so much meter to use in as much as that. I'll move over to the next slide here that talks about this is the second part of factors affecting cost, for example. Now, this is the next three. One is the geographical cost, geographical factors, which talks about the resource type and different amount depending on the geographical area. So let's say, for example, the amount of data, the money you spend buying virtual machine in Africa region will be different from the amount of money you spend buying virtual machine in West US3. So it depends on the geographical location, because some of them might have high reliability and some of them might have less reliability, which means that high availability, which means that some of the resources you have in the cloud in that region, no matter how, if you have any issues regarding, maybe for example, you have there's a downtime in that region, your resource will still continue to work. So that's how the geographical area works. Another aspect we'll talk about factors affecting is the network traffic, the amount of traffic, inbound and outbound traffic. By transferring data within that region, will also determine your the factors affecting cost. Another thing we'll talk about is the subscription model. The subscription model here talks about the kind of subscription, like I explained, the kind of subscription, if you are using basic, if you are using premium, or you're using enterprise. I mean, enterprise is like you have access to everything, which means that apart from you using enterprise support, apart from you using enterprise subscription, you also have enterprise support, which means that you can reach out to Microsoft Azure support team, and then they'll give you a call and help you figure out whether you have any issues within your Azure cloud. And that's that about factors affecting cost here. And then let's talk about the next in line here. We'll talk about Azure Marketplace. I mean, when you say Azure Marketplace, it's like the environment where the Azure Marketplace it allows customers to find and try, purchase, and provision application and services. So there are hundreds of resources you can buy in the marketplace. It's like a general market where you can buy things. You can go to that market and buy any resource you want to buy, you want to use within the cloud region. So the marketplace gives you access to use all of this, for example. And then let's say you want to look for an open source container platform, you find it in the marketplace. If you want to look for developer tools, you find it in the marketplace. And bear in mind, there are some free software you can find in the marketplace to use, all for free. But when you are hosting it in the Azure cloud, I mean, you are still going to pay money for that. That's that about the Azure Marketplace. If you have any questions you want to drill down or talk about, I mean, we can put up your question. Then the next in line here, we'll talk about the Azure pricing calculator. I mean, the pricing calculator is a tool that helps you to estimate the cost of Azure products. For example, you want to buy a virtual machine, you want to host a virtual machine, and you want to host a storage account for your website, and you want to host data from your website in a storage container. So how would you determine? I will give you an example of a pricing calculator. So this is a pricing calculator page. I'll just copy it and paste it on the chart so you guys can view it from. Hold on a second. Drop it in the chat here. 1 second. So that's the link for the pricing calculator. So this is the Azure pricing calculator. So let's say you want to buy a virtual machine, and then you want to use high-end virtual machines. You want to know the estimate, how much it will cost. So this is the link to it. Let's say we want to deploy a virtual machine for an enterprise organization, and you don't know the amount it will cost. You can just click to add to estimate, and then when you click to add estimate, you can select the kind of OS, the region, which kind of tier do you want to use. Is it standard or basic? You can select all of that. How many hours are you going to be running the virtual machine? You can put all of that. Days, months, you can select all of this, and then which kind of operating system do you want to use? You can click on this. Is it Windows or Linux? I mean, Windows is an indigene of Microsoft, which means Windows operating system, it's a default from Microsoft, which means if you're buying it, sometimes you might pay a little bit less compared to other operating system. So let's say, for example, we want to use Windows, and the category we want to use is for general purpose, high performance computer you want to deploy. The storage size, you want to use it on maybe a lesser storage. The license is pay as you go, and let's say this is it now, for example. Now this is the estimate cost. It will cost you for a month if you want to run it for a month for this kind of virtual machine. Let's say you want to put it, host it for days, for example. How many days? You want to put it for, you want to use that virtual machine for, let's say for 5 days. Let me put 5 here. 5 days. You can see the amount, $22. This is the estimate. It's around $20. There may be plus when you add tax. You get to $22 USD. Now this, you can see that this is the amount for 5 days usage. You want to use a virtual machine, an Azure virtual machine, and this is the amount it will cost you. So let's go back to our slide here. The pricing calculator, it helps you to estimate the cost of Azure product you want to use in the cloud. So that's what it does. That's that about the storage account. If you have any questions, or you want to put in between, you can please go ahead and say and ask your questions. So I'll move over to my next. Okay.
So I just wanted to chip in on that. So basically, what Azure pricing calculator is just like how do I put it? The best way to explain it is the way, you know how you want to do shopping. Most of us shop from Amazon or from Konga, from Jumia. Basically, go to know the price of this thing. Oh, okay, I have a service. I want to deploy an application. This application will have 2 storage accounts. You're going to have this VM with 8 gig or this app service with 4 gig. What do I need to do? I want to know how much will it cost me to even go this. So with the Azure pricing calculator, which is the URL that you can go there and basically put the estimate. So basically, hey, if I decide to run my application is going to run. If it's going to run for 1 month, this is what it's going to cost me. It's going to run for 2 days, what's it going to cost me? If it's going to run for 1 week, this is what it's going to cost me. The idea that it helps you to pre-plan ahead. So that way you are not surprised. You're not surprised about cost. You have an idea of the estimate. So another thing I want to mention that Dominic already mentioned is the region. So he mentioned that some regions are cheaper than some regions. So for example, if you deploy in East US, it's actually cheaper than if you deploy in, for example, South Africa. Just think of it like this now. Some of the services that we use, for example, if you buy a service from China, if you buy a service from China, it's actually cheaper than if you buy from US. Think of it like that. So Microsoft is saying, hey, for some of our services, if you buy it directly from if we buy it from East US, it's cheaper than if you buy it from another region. That's just what it's all about. But of course, remember what I mentioned last week, because I say, hey, you deploy your services to the data center closest to you because of what network latency. That's what it's all about. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. So in other words, the Azure pricing calculator is like a window shopper. You know what the window shopper is? You just want to go and know the price. You don't have money yet, but you want to know the price. So that's what the Azure pricing calculator is. You can know the price, and then it will help you to drill down to know that this is the amount I'm going to take before I go to the cloud to spend that, to use that resources. So in overall, what he's trying to say is you can tend to become a window shopper for a few minutes or hours to learn about this. So I shared the link. You can copy it and post it and see how the pricing calculator works. That's that about the Azure pricing calculator. And then, okay, we'll talk about marketplace. And okay, so let's talk about, so this is an exercise. I think after this session, I will drop it in the group chat where you guys can use, have access to the Azure exercises, more or less like a take home where you guys can discuss or try to deploy or create simple resources or find estimates, how to calculate or configure resources in the cloud. All of this, I'm going to share like a link so that you guys can go through that. Next in our slide here is Azure cost management. So when you talk about Azure cost management now, it's how to manage your cost. For example, what does the cost management do? The Azure cost management is like a set of tools that helps you keep track of how much you are spending in Azure services. For example, here they have the billing report. The billing report that we all know, it means that you get detailed reports that shows how you are spending money on Azure. So a simple example is like getting a monthly bank statement. That's what your billing report talks about. Another example here they talk about is the data enrichment. Your data enrichment, basically what it means is like you can add extra information like tags or labels, so that you can know that this is the resources to your spending spending or data, to make it more easier to understand. And a simple example is like a note. For example, adding notes to your expenses such as office internet, waste management. So I mean, just a note so that you know that this is what you are spending for the month and all. So another thing we talk about here is alerting. So sometimes you can set the alerting. You can set an alert where if you are overspending, let's say for example you work as a cloud engineer, and then you want to help them manage cost in the cloud. And for example, they have so much they have a budget every month to spend, let's say about $2,000. They don't want to exceed $2,000. With the Azure cost management or the Azure tool, there's a tool in Azure or services in Azure that helps you to keep track of your spending limit. Once you reach 1,800, it will alert you that we are not yet 30 days of the month. We are not yet in the 30th days, and then you are almost 1,800. That means you're almost reaching $2,000, which is you're about to pass your limit. So the alert is like it gives you a warning if you are about to spend more than your budget. You understand? It gives you a warning. It say, hey, you are about to cross your boundaries. You are about to exceed your budget, and if you do, that means you are not managing that your resources well in the cloud. I mean, these are the things that the alerting tool does. So recommendation cost. The recommendation cost actually Azure gives you tips to how to save money. I will show you that. Let me go to the clouds Azure portal. So remember I said I'm going to discuss about how you are going to open your Azure account. So I'll quickly type this here. So this is my Azure. This is my Azure account. Let me quickly go to. If you want to go to open your Azure account, you just type portal.azure.
Sorry to cut you short. We kind of have a question. Someone says, "Hey, can I take it before while you are going?" They say, since pricing depends on region and also considering latency, how do I combine both factors to get my pricing right? That's a very good question. So, hey, okay, you're telling me region matters and pricing depends on region. How do I combine it? You combine based on where are your users. So, for example, now, one of our colleagues is in, I don't know, that's John. John is in New Zealand. So if John is trying to spin up a services for consumers in New Zealand, it doesn't make sense for John to go and create Azure services in East US that is cheaper, right? Because his users are going to be in New Zealand. So that means if he creates in East US, he's going to pay more for traffic flowing all the way from New Zealand to East US, which is what Dominic mentioned for inbound traffic. So what you focus on 90% of the time is where your users. If you know where your users are, then you now factor on the resources around those users. So for example, now, if I know my users are in New Zealand, for example, and I'm going to choose Azure New Zealand, I can now factor in things around, okay, do I want to do replication to other regions? I might avoid the replication because I know that, hey, there's no need for me to do that because all my users are there, depending on the service level agreement of the application. So it depends, okay, when we go further into DevOps, further down the line, you will see where I talk about, hey, okay, do you want to treat your infrastructure as cattle, or do you want to treat it as cattle, or do you want to treat it as pets? So that's we're not talking about that now. But in the meantime, this is all about the option you choose depending closely mainly where your users are, then that will determine what your costs are. For example, if I'm doing my lab environment now, I choose mostly East US 2 because that's the cheapest region, because I know that I'm not really publishing to any users, I'm just publishing to myself. Basically, that's it. Okay. Any more questions? Somebody's typing.
Okay, let's continue while the others are typing. So so this is if you want to go to your portal.azure.com, you can just go to Azure portal.azure.com, and then this is your Azure portal. And then let's say you want to track your network. When you go to Azure under Azure Monitor, you can see all the tools that you can monitor or resources you can monitor. You can have insights, which means you can monitor your application availability, your the performances, errors, usage. I mean, the insight will give you an overview of your resources within your infrastructure or the organization if you work as a cloud engineer. Although I did not.
We lost Dominic. Dominic, are you still there? We lost it for a bit. Hi, Dominic, are you there?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right. Yeah, we can hear you now. Wenga has a question. Boyaga has a question that I will quickly like to address. Sorry to cut it short. So he basically said, hey, what if my users are all over the world? That's a very good question. So in the context of networking, in context of Azure, in context of everything traffic, there's what we call content delivery net, CDN. So CDN is similar to what Cloudflare does for us. So Azure has that service called Azure Front Door. That's basically meaning, hey, Azure is basically saying, but of course, it has extra cost. If I have a service that is that needs to be globally available, for example, let's say, for example, I'm designing next Facebook now, I'm designing next TikTok, and I'm hosting it on Azure. I can decide to put it on East US and use a service like Cloudflare or Front Door to distribute that service all across Microsoft Edge locations. It's going to cost more, but there's a service, there's a resource that handles that for us. So you can design for East US, but know that you have to add something on top of it to make it globally available. And another thing people will do is that they basically deploy those services at each edge location, at each region. Yeah, right. We deploy at each region just to make sure that, hey, if you're coming from these places, you're going to get patched to that, sent to that region. That's why sometimes I've ever noticed that some areas you open, you see /EN-US. Sometimes at the back end of that service /EN, at the back end of this, they're directing you to where you need, to where your services are. Where your services are. Thank you, Favor. So wait, I don't know whether I answered your question correctly. If not, after Dominic is done, I can also go deeper to explain.
Okay. All right. So thank you so much for that. So this is like your monitoring overview. So like I said, if you want to get an overview of your application insight, you want to see the performance, how it's working, you want to see if you're always having errors, you want to see the availability, which is the uptime, you want to see the usage, the amount of usage you have on resources like this in the cloud. So you can use all of this and then to be able to drill down and manage your resources and monitor your resources in cloud. You want to check for container insight. Let's say you host an AKS, Azure Kubernetes service. You have some pods and running, and then you want to see how they're working, how they are faring in the cloud. You're able to see how to gain visibility into these performances, check their health and likes. You want to see your network insight again. I mean, this is one key insight you guys need to also look if you work as a cloud engineer, a DevOps engineer, or an SRE. I mean, security-wise, you have to ensure that nobody is coming through your network through using a backdoor or MTM, MITM, which is man-in-the-middle attack, to enter your network. I mean, all of these things, you can check and monitor your resources in the cloud. If you want to create your account, I think it's easier. Although this is my own account, and then I have to shut down some of the resources in the cloud. And yes, please.
Okay, so I wanted to handle the creation of accounts when you're done. So I want to share my screen. Someone else will basically use that URL and try to create their own free accounts. Let's handle when you're done. And also, I wanted to show example of cost analysis also when you're done.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. I think that's for that. And then I think so. This is how this is. We've talked about Azure cost management and how you can use the cost management in terms of reporting, in terms of data enrichment, in terms of alerting, and then recommendation cost. Remember, recommendation cost basically gives you Microsoft Azure would recommend for you in terms of if you the kind of resources you want to run. Let's say you have like a SaaS company, for example. Let's say you work for Netflix and you work as a cloud engineer, and how you can use the Azure recommendation cost to be able to drill down to see how which are the resources best to use for Netflix organization, and how you can Azure can recommend what is good for you, so that you don't overspend in the cloud as when you work as a cloud engineer. In summary, I would say that one of the benefits of the Azure cost management is it provides metadata for your Azure resources. You have logically organized resources into taxonomy, which means I will explain that the taxonomy we're talking about is like you are saying you don't want to overspend or use money. You don't want to overspend in the cloud. So taxonomy is like just like a group of organized things, like I would say tags. It helps you sort out the resources into categories in terms of making it so that you can making it find those resources easier and manage them. Let's say, for example, you have 10,000 I'm using cars, for example. Let's say you have 10,000 Peugeot 504, and how do you know which one is which? It is the chassis number that's been tagged to each of those cars, and that's what taxonomy means. It's the chassis number that's been tagged to each of those cars, and the plate number. So if they don't have plate number, they have a chassis number, date of production, time, the hour. So those things are called taxonomy. You can be able to see each and every one of, to be able to identify each of the 10,000 Peugeot 504 cars in between, so that if you tag a resources, for example, who created these resources? When was the resources created? How was the resource? What is this resources going to be used for? I mean, those are taxonomy we're talking about here. And then I think that's that about it. So another benefit is it's very useful for rolling up billing information. So those are the basic things you need to know about using Azure cost management in the cloud. Another thing here we'll talk about here to our next slide is tags. So what are tags? Tags basically provide metadata for your Azure resources. I just talked about it. Logically, you organize resources into taxonomy, which is what I just discussed. Consists of name value pair. So let's say the name value pair you're talking about what's it called? You're talking about naming convention, right? The name value pair, like which departments, is it finance? So these are things we're talking about, like we're talking about name value pair. I think that's that about tags. Tags are very good. It is highly useful in every organization. Once you create resources, for example, now someone create the resources or create the resources that had to damage something in the cloud. You can track that resources and say, hey, I think it is John or somebody who actually did this. and then you created these resources on a particular date, on a particular time, and this was what you're going to want to use the resources for. Tags are easy to be able to catch somebody. If someone does something bad in the cloud, I mean, you'll be able to catch somebody who does this. So tags are very essential. And you can set up a policy that if you're trying to create the resources and you don't put the tag, it will give you, the resources will not be able to create, because why? You set up a policy that users or admin or cloud engineers have to adhere to those resources to be compliant in using or creating those resources. I think that's what those tags are all about. So let's go back to my next slide here: governance and compliance. This is a very key topic here. Let's say, for example, we have a country, right? You have presidents, and in those somebody who oversees the entire country, and then you have states. In each of these states, you have governance. You have governors that oversees each of those states, right? And then in each of those states, you have security operatives, which are police, army, navy. So those people are the people who set compliances, ensure that you don't go ahead against this compliance. Let's say I set up a policy that nobody should cross the road. If you cross the road without using the pedestrian, you'll be arrested. So you have to be compliant, which means you have to set up, you have to abide to the rules and that govern that particular state or country. So that's that about it. So we're going to talk about under governance and compliance. We're going to talk about policies. Policy is a key what's it called? A key topic in Azure. I think I designed something for a company, the organization, where I help them to restrict policies on unauthorized users, so that people cannot just open their resources from a third-party computer or a third-party internet. I set up a policy to enable resource lock. If you are creating resources and you don't, it's not under that resource lock, the resources will not be created. I mean, those policies you have to be compliant to those policies. And also, let's talk about each one of these topics. The first one in line is Azure policy. I mean, policy is like setting up security, which is very good. Policy helps you to do a whole lot. See, Azure policy makes, like, let me explain what the policy means in a layman terms. The Azure policy is a set of tools that helps organization make sure everyone follows the same rules when using Azure. So it helps to keep things organized and secure within the budget, right? So Azure policy helps to enforce organization standard and to assess compliance at scale, which means it provides governance, resource consistency, regulatory compliance, security, cost, and management. It evaluates all of this and identify the kind of resources you should run that does not comply within the policy of that organization. So setting up policy is like setting up security in your resources. The reason why most of people set up policies so that someone an unauthorized user or a user, let's say that you get employed into a new company, for example, as a cloud engineer, and then you went through the onboarding process and they guide you through the cloud process, policies and their rules and regulations within the company, right? And then they're asking you to, like, hey, they didn't tell you that they didn't set up a policy, and then maybe you mistakenly delete one of their storage account that is housing too many information. That person might end up losing his job. So instead of making the new joiner to be unaware of all of these things, as a cloud administrator, as a cloud admin, you need to be security conscious. You need to set up policies that will help you restrict users so that they don't just end up deleting stuff without their permission, right? If you try to delete it, you say you don't have permission to perform these tasks. Azure will tell you that right now. So I think I have some of the resources in the cloud here. I will leave all of that to my colleague also to do some of the demo for you guys so that you guys can ask questions, and then something you don't understand, it is easier for you to also find out how they work and how they operate. One of the good things about understanding the fundamentals in cloud is how to use it, when to use it, and where to use it. Basics, you need to understand the basics and concept, and a basic concept. That's how it works. So let's, sorry.
Just to add to the policy thing, just see policy as governance, right? So for example, now, we all, okay, let me say we all, most of us have children, right? You know that a child does not, a child, or most of us, when we employ somebody to our house, we know that the person comes to your house, the person has, as the person has already entered your house, but there's some things you don't want the person to do. So how do you ensure that the person does not do that? You implement things. For example, let me say, for example, when we are small, my father used to, hey, you don't want us to, on the TV. So what they do, they hide the remotes, or they take the power cable. For example, they say our parents used to say, hey, okay, we don't want you to go outside of the house. What they do, they lock the outside gates just for you to go. Policy is about you enabling standards. So for example, now, they employed Nonso into John's organization. John's organization, they say their VM was carry John VM John 001. The next VM John 002. So that's their standard. That's John's organization standard. But Nonso just came. Nonso doesn't know. Nonso tries, if there is no policy, Nonso can come and create Nonso VM 001 and it will go through. But if John has policies enabling the organization, whenever Nonso tries to create a VM name, a VM that is not, doesn't meet the naming convention, is going to stop it. So Azure policy is saying, hey, Azure policy stays after RBAC, after role-based access control. So even though you have permission to do it, you cannot do it because I have something that supersedes your permission, your permission that stops you from doing that. That's what Azure policy is all about. So I'm going to, just to emphasize it very more, this is very key because most times whenever I do interviews, one of the things they ask you, okay, hey, what are the things you use for governance? One of the most important things you use for governance in Azure is Azure policy. Azure policy is critical because that's how, even despite the fact that somebody has access, if they want you want them to permit to stay at a particular standard, use Azure policy to stop it. Azure policy helps you to do that. For example, last week or thereabout, I was showing you guys how to create VMs. And I was showing you a VM that's as expensive as $700 or something a month. So if my organization that, hey, as small as we are, we don't want somebody to create that, we can set up policy to say, hey, okay, you can only create VMs in this queue. You can only create VMs that are less than $100 or less than $20, $30 a month. I can enforce that. So even though you have permission to create VM, you will not be able to create it because I am using policy to block it. That's what policy is all about.
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much for that. And then one key thing again, you have to be compliant to those policies. If you try to do it, if we set you will see a notification. You do not have. You see a notification saying that you do not have permission to perform this task at this moment because it will state it under that. You see a rule. You see a notification stating this, that you have to be compliant to this. So I mean, policy is like setting security, like also I've said, setting securities. You have to be compliant to those rules. And then you have to be rule abiding. That's what they're trying to say in overall. It's like setting security and governance to govern that, ensure you don't make mistake. Or even though, like you said, even though you have access to do these things, you cannot do this because there's a rule for this organization. So it's a key. Policy is very key. We do it every day. I deploy the policy for almost there for an organization. I remember I deployed the policy. I was using Azure Bicep to write a script and then deploy this policy in the cloud, where that, in the sense that we notice that people are entering they are using different internets, like different public internet, to just open the Azure portal, and then we keep seeing different high traffic in those resources. I mean, it's dangerous because using a public internet that you see a free Wi-Fi to log into an organization portal, it is dangerous. I mean, you are setting the company for serious security breach, in the sense that it's going to cost them millions or thousands of dollars. Somebody can get that and then hack into that portal, and then before you know, data are being breached, resources are being moved. They are going to steal a lot of resources. And what will happen? They are going to track which what's it called? They're going to track which IP. How does the person gain access to all of this public Wi-Fi? So it is mandatory to set policy so that when you try to use a free internet from the airport, or from maybe from the school or anywhere, you see free internet, free Wi-Fi, and then you are working in a company remotely, and then maybe you went to do something in around the airport, and they say, oh, there's a free Wi-Fi here. Let me quickly use this free Wi-Fi and log into the company portal and do something. As you are doing it, you don't know who is passing through who is monitoring your IP address. Before you know, they can steal a whole lot of things. So policies are set. When they try to use free internet, it's not going to open the portal for them. So which means that you are going to only use private internet, specifically on the domain, when you are on the domain, which is you are going to use the company's internet to be able to open resources, so that you don't get security breach and data theft. I mean, these are the things that are key things that you need to know about policies. Another thing is we'll talk about is Azure policy helps you to manage resources so that they are set up in the right way and secure and meet legal company requirement. Legal company requirement. I'll put that into perspective. That's like you ensure that you don't breach data breach. You don't go against GDPR law and stuff like that. I mean, these are key concepts you need to understand. So resource log. I mean,
sorry, before you move forward, I want to ask a question by Leo. Leo said, do every team member in an organization have access to a single login console that requires someone to delete anything, or it is all linked to individual logins? Okay, so I understand what you're saying. So you're saying, okay, so let me use a storage account now. So does every team member have access, use the same login? No. Of course, you can create an admin account and share it to everybody, but it's not a standard. In Azure, you're expected to each person to have their own admin account or their own login account they used to log in. So that means you cannot grant permission, RBAC, role-based access control, to that particular user based on what you wanted to do. For example, last week I said, okay, hey, I newly joined an organization. I joined an organization. I'm an IT manager of an organization, and an intern joined. Does it make sense for me for the intern to have the same access as the architect have? No. I don't trust the intern yet. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give the intern maybe a read access. So he can see everything the architect does. He can see them, but he or she, the intern, cannot make changes yet until I can gauge his knowledge to what they can do. But even when I gauge the knowledge that they have at a higher level, I can set up redundancy, which is the next thing that Dominic is going to talk about, which is resource lock. Say, hey, even though you have access to delete, you will not be able to delete this resource because I put this resource on a lock. Think of it like this now, for example. Now, let me use, for example, a bank OP. Just imagine that OP now, the database of OP, someone goes and deletes it. That means all transactions are gone, right? Imagine that. But in Azure, you can put a resource lock that say, even if you have permission to delete, you cannot delete this resource. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very funny one, because I mean, most people who are not cloud conscious, I'm using the word cloud conscious in the sense that once you are cloud conscious, you have to be security conscious as well, because it's not an easy. You don't just be, okay, I'm the cloud admin guy that is managing the entire resources, and you don't set all of these things. You are going to set yourself for drag, and then if someone mistakenly deletes a database that contains a lot of information about their customers, you know what that means, or people, it's something, one of the resources that they're using to send payments, let's say, for example, they create like an SQL script. Now that script to determine the amount of successful payment solutions transfer that people does on their phone, ensure that they are successful, right? And when the transfer is being done, it's going to send an alert to the customer saying, hey, you did transfer of 50,000 naira, it's successful, yes? So like an auto messaging, like there's what you can use Kafka to do that. So when you host all of that in the storage account, you put all of that, and then someone mistakenly delete that, and then customer is saying, I sent you message, I didn't get an alert. You're setting that now. Every customer start sending requests, going back to the bank, say, hey, something is happening, something is happening. We cannot do this. We are not seeing alert. We are not seeing payments successful, but the payment is going, and we are not seeing all of that. The IT admin or the security guy in that company will be up for drag. I mean, they will going to question you so many, they're going to ask you so many questions. Why are this happening? Customers are complaining, it's affecting our users, our customers, and all of that. I mean, all of this, you have to be security conscious. Let's talk about logs, for example. What are logs? Secure a resource log. A resource log is like a safety feature in Azure that helps you to protect important resources like servers, database, and storage, which are just from being accidentally deleted. From what being accidentally deleted? A resource log protects you from your resource from being accidentally deleted or modification. Modification means somebody go and change something. You put James log, or let's say you put Cesar Tech log, and then somebody go and change it to James log or put it to John's log or something. Modify the name and all of that. And someone, you are looking for Cesar Tech log, you are not finding it. Someone has modified the name. So when you set a security log, nobody can have access to either delete those resources or modify those resources. And one of the key points I will mention here is, if you put a resources on log, for example, right, it cannot be deleted or changed unless you remove the log first. Unless you remove that log. Once that log is there, I think I have one resource that I set up log, that because I in my Azure account, I gave a lot of people access to be using it. When those people in which I was training at some point, I gave them access. If you notice, I set up my organization here, and then I set up a security log, a resource log on some of my resources. And then I noticed that VM, I'm using it to do I used to do demo and stuff like that. I was getting email that someone is trying to delete and stuff like that. And I went to go and track, and I asked those guys, I gave you guys for only to use this my portal for academic purpose. Test, deploy, break, delete, and do not delete this thing. Why are people trying to delete? Sometimes at some point I was just laughing, like, why are you guys trying to do all of these things? And you didn't know that I set up. If I did not set up a log, that's how I would lose that virtual machine. And then I'll be looking for it in the portal. I'll be searching the name of the virtual machine. Maybe someone has changed the name or does something. So the security logs help you to put like a lock on the resources that it cannot be deleted or changed. And then one of the key things that you need to know is how to manage logs. Let me go back to the slide. How to manage logs at different levels. You can see here, if you have we have different log type. For example, manage logs at subscription resource group or individual resource level within the Azure portal. Let's say you have a read-only access, right? Which means a read-only, you can only view, but you cannot delete, you cannot update. But if you have a delete access, which means you can read it, you can view it, you can update it, but you cannot delete it, right? Delete says no. So if you set all of these policies, it means that you cannot delete all of this. If it's a read-only, once you set these two type of logs, you will not be able to delete, it will not be able to modify. You can only read it and then update. You cannot update it, rather. So let me talk about, let me go to my next slide here and talk about the walkthrough session, how the logs work. I think I'll leave that to Nonso after this class. Nonso will go ahead and try to do one or two demos to show you how the logs work, and show you when you try to delete the resources that has a resource log, it means that you will not be able, you see the notification on the portal telling you you cannot delete these resources because there is a lock in it. So these are key things you see in that in the portal. I'll leave that to my colleague to walk you through that session while I move to the next slide here. We'll talk about Azure Trust Portal. This Azure Trust Portal here, people try to ask so many questions. How does Azure Trust Portal works? How you can use the Azure Trust Portal? What is the Azure Trust Portal used for? When you say somebody has to go through the GDPR law and all of that, Azure Service Trust Portal is a special website. I will drop the link for the Azure what's it called? the Azure Service Trust Portal. See, the Azure Service Trust Portal is a special website from Microsoft that helps you learn how Azure keeps data safe and meet legal or industry requirements per region. What does it mean? Like, you ensure that you are going through all of this. What's it called? You are going through all of. You are ensure that your company is following guidance under GDPR law. You are not exposing people's information or data and all of this. I mean, it's a special website from Microsoft that helps you learn how Azure keeps data safe and then meets legal and industry requirements. You know, keep your data safe, meets legal. When we talk about data, you're talking about GDPR law. Like we know in Nigeria, we don't have GDPR. But we don't have GDPR law. Data are leaked left, right, center. Imagine somebody from NIMSI selling data, selling people's information up and down to gain monetary benefits. It makes no sense. So that's why you see your country most times before they employ someone from the US, before they employ someone from Nigeria from the US in the US organization. Now, so you can testify to that. The vetting is endless. They ask you to bring your the vetting that the way they are going to vet you, you'll be shocked. The information they'll be asking you down to your village, you'll be shocked. So in case you go and steal somebody's data to go and sell and to go and make billions or millions of dollars, they will track the person, how the money is, how all of this happen, and they are going to catch that person. So all of this is a concept to how to keep you safe, to ensure that you are following the GDPR law and also the legal industry requirements as a whole. I will share the link. Let me see if I have the link. I'll drop it on the chat while we go to that. So let's go to our next slide here. We talk about Microsoft Core View. I think some of this, you must have seen some of this and then be asking, what is Microsoft Core View? What is it used for? So the Microsoft Core View is a set of tools. I will put it this way. It's a set of tools from Microsoft that helps you organize, manage, protect, and then understand all their data. That is, no matter where it is being stored. If you like, store it in Nigeria, Core View will track it and say, okay, we see that somebody data end to end is good, is following the GDPR law. So the Core View, like key point here is the Core View helps you to keep track of your data, make sure it's safe, and follow rules or laws about your data, right? So the Core View helps you to do all of this and ensure that your data at transit is safe. And then another thing is it helps brings together information about your data, in different places, your own servers, on-premise, your cloud, and online, like your SaaS software, like your Office 365 and the likes. So that's what your Core View does. So it's like a family of data governance risks and compliance solution that helps you get a single unified view into your data. Microsoft Core View brings about insight on your on-premise multi-cloud softwares and services data all together, ensure they are safe at transit. I think that's that for Microsoft Core View. If you have any questions, please.
Sorry.
Okay.
Dominic, just to check in, Helen has a question. Helen said, I understand that it's been said that you set rules to avoid deleting some things from the cloud. But are there backups, or are you the one to decide to do a backup yourself? I'm trying to equate the way deleting to recycle bin works. Okay, Helen, very good. So in Azure, some certain resources you can enable backups. So for example, now if you have a database, now you can enable backup both what we call Delta or incremental backup or full backup. So you can set up these backups to backup as much as you want. So, but remember, if you're backing up, is storing the storage, and that means you're going to be charged more, right? So same way with VMs. With VMs, you can use Azure backups to set the enable backups. So it's possible. Even storage accounts, you can enable what we call soft deletes. You can back up storage account and you can enable soft delete. Soft delete means, hey, when you delete something, it doesn't really go. It actually goes somewhere and it's waiting for you for after 30 days, you can restore it. So yes, in Azure, they have all these things enabled. But just know, as you're enabling those features, it also means more money, more expenses. So like our people used to say, better soup what? Nah.
Money killer. Okay, thank you about that. Some of the links of this service trust portal, I'm going to post it so that you can take it, take it like a sneak peek and see how understand each one of those links, and then understand some of the concepts along the line. So next in line here, we're going to talk about management and deployment tools. This is like your everyday lifestyle when you're using Microsoft Azure, be it any public cloud services, for example, Azure, AWS, GCP, Oracle, IBM Cloud, any one of these cloud, they have their management tools and deployment tools as well. This would help you to know how they work. So the management tool, you're going to describe the Azure portal like you have seen. Some of you have seen the Azure portal. Some of you might have access to or have an account in the Azure portal. No, so it's going to talk all about that, and it's going to show you how to create the Azure portal, do like a demo into it, and then it's going to also describe the cloud share. It's going to describe the cloud share, including Azure CLI, which is Azure Command Line Interface. Just like you have the command prompts from your Windows machine, you have it in the cloud as well. You're going to also know about Azure Cloud PowerShell. You do know that you can link your machine, your physical machine, which is your laptop, to your Azure Cloud, which means that you have your Azure Cloud Cloud Share, PowerShell cloud in the cloud. You have it on your machine. You can, once you have internet, you can log into that machine and deploy stuff. It will go to the portal directly. All of this, we're going to talk about this in our later session, which is the Azure Admin, when we're doing AZ-104. I think it's a key concept. We're going to see how to work, how to use it. We're going to discuss the purpose of Azure Arc. This Arc is a very good topic. If those of you have on-premise resources and you have a private cloud, you want to migrate resources or join resources to cloud, all of this Azure Arc work into this as well. We're going to describe how Azure Resource Manager and Azure ARM templates. Remember, there are two types. The ARM one is the Azure Resource Management, one is the Azure ARM templates. One is the templates in deploying stuff in the cloud. We are going to discuss all of this and then show you like how the interfaces are. My colleague Nonso is going to drill down and then do like a demo so that you guys can see and ask your questions if you have. Going to my next slide here, tools for interacting with Azure. There are basic tools you can interact with Azure. These tools helps you to organize. These tools help you to like manage Azure resources. There are several tools like the Azure portal, which you have seen, the Azure PowerShell, some of you must have seen it, Azure Cloud Shell, and then Azure Command Line Interface. You can link your local machine to the cloud, and then anytime you log into the cloud portal, you can have access to, you log into your machine or go to PowerShell from your local machine, you can have access to the cloud and build resources. You can even link your this interface, what's it called, your VS Code. You can link it to your Azure cloud public cloud resources to deploy stuff from your VS Code. Once you write the code and deploy it, it will go directly to the portal. You can link it and connect it, all of that. So I think we'll leave the demo for Nonso to go over on that aspect. I might just do some of the discussion about Azure portal here. So what is Azure portal? Azure portal is the website for Microsoft Azure with a dashboard and menu. Like you have seen here, I'll just show you a simple, this is the Azure portal. It's like a dashboard. If you go to home, you can see that you want to create VM, you want to create any kind of resources. You want to go to marketplace, you can search from the portal here. Like I said, I already gave you the link to the, so this is marketplace, cost alert, cost analysis. Remember, we talk about all of these things, recommendation and all. So the marketplace where you see bunch of, it's like going to a general market. For example, if you are looking for fish, you are looking for egg, you are looking to buy a house in that marketplace. I'm just giving an instance, for example, you will find it there. So it's generally where you can buy anything, both the ones that are free, you get it for free, both the ones that are monetary, you will also get for, in a monetary aspect. So that's how this is the Azure portal, and you want to search anything at all, you can search it from this part. I will leave that to my colleague to drill that and show you how it's been the Azure navigate through the portal and then gain experience of basic understanding of how the portal works. So how to use the portal is you click around with your mouse, like you can see from here. You fill out forms and see everything visually. That is what the portal is. But when you're using a command prompt, for example, you're using a cloud share, for example, to write a bash script in the portal and deploy, right? You do not see, it's like a completely dark environment. You can switch to bash, you can switch to cloud share. It's a completely dark environment. You can do all kinds of things here. It's just like when you open PowerShell from here now, right? It's the same thing, the same blue environment. You can make it dark, you can set colors, you can check for anything at all, right? So, I mean, this is an example of your Azure Cloud Share. You can click it, you can see from here, this is your Cloud Share. I can list the amount of, I can say, okay, on the Cloud Share, I can say LS, oh, sorry. Sorry, 1 second. This is hanging. What's going on? So this is the cloud share. This is how it. You can see all of the resources here, and then be it anything you want to use, you want to deploy, you can use all of this from here. Escape. So that's that. Let me go over to my slide here, and then we'll talk about the Azure Cloud Share, which I just showed you. It's an online command. It's an online command line tool that you use inside your web browser, that you can use inside your web browser. How to use it? Type your command, you manage your Azure resources, and then you can have access. And then, so for people who want to write, use scripts for command line, or but you don't want to install anything. Although you can install through the cloud shell, any of these services, you can install resources, or you can install application using any of these services. Yes. So go back to my next one here. I will talk about the Azure PowerShell, which is what I just showed you. And then a simple analogy: the Azure what's it called? Azure Portal is like using a banking app on your phone. That's what the Azure Portal is. It's like using a banking app on your phone. And then the Azure Cloud Share is like using an online calculator on your browser. That's what the Cloud Share is. I'm just giving you a simple analogy. And then the Azure CLI, which is the Azure Command Line Interface, is like using a calculator app to you installed on your computer. So this would help you. And the Azure PowerShell is like using a special calculator for advanced users. So let's go over to our next slide and talk about Azure Arc. Azure Arc is Azure Arc is from Microsoft that helps you manage computers, servers, and cloud services, even if they are not running inside Microsoft Azure, which means that you can run your on-premise resources, your private cloud. You can run it in the your private on-premise resources. You can run it in the cloud. You can run it in the cloud. If you look at this diagram here, you can see that this is the Azure Arc, this is the cloud environment resources, and you can extend your on-premise resources to make it like a multi-cloud and edge, for example, a multi-cloud environment, which means this is the user, this is the customer, this is your private cloud, this is your public cloud. You can connect this, there's a bridge. You can connect this in between and ensure that a customer or user can use resources on your private cloud and also use resources on your public cloud. What are the resources that you're talking about? You're talking about your storage account, your VM, your orchestration tools like Kubernetes, Docker, and the likes. So this is what Azure Arc is. So let me give you like a tip, for example. Imagine that you have computers and servers in different places, for example, which is in your on-premise, and then some of these resources are in your office, which is they run in your office physically. You can see the servers, right? And some of them are in the cloud, like your Azure, AWS, GCP, like I mentioned. So Azure Arc lets you manage all of this, all of the resources, right? It lets you manage all of them from one place using what? Using the Azure portal, using the what? Azure portal. So you can see that this Azure portal here, this Azure port, this is your cloud, and then this is your on-premise resources, and this is your cloud resources. You can sit here and have access to both this. Even while you're at home, you can have access to your on-premise resources using the Azure Arc. I mean, it is very simple to understand. I think this is the key. What Microsoft is telling you right now is trying to tell you that, hey, whether you are using physical cloud, we know that it's expensive to manage, but you can still have access to just view them in the cloud. But you are still using your local resources, which is your on-premise cloud. You are still using it, but you can still view them in the cloud. So that's what Azure Arc talked about. Going to my next slide here, we'll talk about Azure Resource Manager. I mean, the Azure Resource Manager is one thing that you guys need to understand. It's like Azure, which is that we're talking about the Azure Resource Manager. It provides management layer that enables you to create, update, and delete resources in your subscription. You want to use, create a store. You want to create a web application to host your company software. Let's say you run a SaaS company, for example, or you work for, let's say you work for Netflix, for example, and then they are complaining that they are spending much money on their private cloud. You as a cloud engineer, they employ you as a cloud engineer, and they want you to recommend for them which native application, web application you can use. You can use the Azure Web App. I mean, if you don't want to use Kubernetes, Azure Kubernetes, you can use Azure Web App. You can host the Netflix software inside that web application. Customers would have access to it. The web application will run 24/7. You can set it in a high in a region where they have fault tolerance, which means no matter how information, or how do I put it, no matter how data or the internet breaks down within that particular region, the web application will still run because it's run in a high availability region. For example, I think we already discussed that. Let's say you remember the time where I think sometime April last year or this year. And also remind me, there was a time in which in Nigeria where internet was down. There's a cable was destroyed under the sea and needs to be fixed. I think for about a week or so. So I use Starlink, for example. So I don't have issues with that. My Starlink was working because the internet is from the space. So at that point in time, I was so happy because I've faced so many issues about internet. So let's say so people who have access, people who don't have access to internet, and let's say you run resources in the cloud, and then your customers are unable to do stuff or to use some of this application, and then it will cost you money. You lose customers at that point in time. I'm just saying this because I'm using this as an analogy. Let's say you don't run this on a high availability area, your web application, and then you host resources in the cloud in this web application, like Netflix, for example. And then people who in that region have downtime in their internet service, they won't have access to some of this web application because why? You don't have access to internet. If you have a very good internet, you can have access to be able to use it, even though the even though the region is having a downtime or high latency at that point in time. So going to my next slide here, we're going to discuss each one of these. I will do like show you. Should I just go ahead? Also, okay, I'll leave that to also to give you like a simple overview of how the Azure ARM template works. So it's remember, like I said, it's a Microsoft tool that helps you organize, manage, and control all your resources. Help you to organize, create, and manage all your resources and control your resources. It's central control. One of the key benefits is it has central control, which means the template helps you to manage everything in the cloud. Like I said, virtual machines, service management, web applications, storage, all of this, it's part of it. It helps you organize resources, which means you can group related resources. All VMs, all compute resources will be in one group. All web application will be in another group. All data store will be in another group. All service management will be in another group. So all of these things it will help you to do all of that. And another benefit or key point from the Azure Resource Manager is a template for automation, which means that you can use this template to quickly set up resources in a repeatable way, where it will save you time, it will reduce mistakes, and they are code reusable, which means when you put them in your repository, when I talk about repository, I'm talking about GitHub Actions, Bitbuckets. There are so many repos. You can host them in a repository, and then the DevOps engineer say, oh, you deploy stuff. I want to add, let's say, for example, you deploy VM and you give the virtual machine, 500 gig, and you have stored a lot of resources. Now you have about 498. Remain just 1 point something gig to exhaust the storage of that virtual machine. What do? You can write up a template. This for set up automation. By when you say setting up automation, which means you are going to run it through CI/CD pipeline. You're going to learn that in the continuous stage, in the later stage of our AZ104, talking about our Azure automation. You're going to see all of that. So it's code reusable. If an engineer deploys stuff, after deploying that VM and you exhaust the storage, I can just add up a script to that template that you already create, and then redeploy it through CI/CD pipeline, which means they are code reusable. One of the things again is access and security, which means ARM templates help you to control who can access it, or who can change your resources by keeping everything safe in your repository, which is like your GitHub, like I've mentioned. Go over to my next slide here. We are going to talk. So before that, I'd like to talk about, give you like a simple example of your ARM template. A simple example: you have a room of resources, like in a meeting, office, storage. So I'm just giving examples. You decide who can enter the room, who have access to those rooms. You can put a checklist, template to set up the rooms. For example, the same way every time. Before you enter this room, you come with a code. Just like before you come into some estate, for example, now they will ask you, where are you going? Who are you going to see? What is your code? And you say, oh, I don't have the code. Then you can enter the estate. That's like a key example about ARM template and how it works. Another key thing I love very much. I use this a lot myself, and also Hugo. Everybody uses this. If you are a DevOps engineer, you are a cloud engineer, cloud infrastructure engineer, you are a platform engineer, you are I think you are a data scientist. You will also use this because these things are very good. The infrastructure as a code tool. I mean, is one tool that we use virtually every day. What is IAC? They call it IAC. The I is for infrastructure, the A is for us, and the C is for code. So what is the infrastructure as a code? What is IAC? IAC is a way to manage and set up your computer systems, servers, and network, for example, using a code instead of doing it manually. When they say manually, instead of going to the portal and just click, you want to create VM, you can write an infrastructure as a code tool, and then you can write a script on IAC, and then to be able to deploy resources. You want to deploy virtual machines. A key point here that I would like to mention is the IAC tool is like an automation setup. It helps, instead of clicking buttons, next, fill out forms, set up servers, next. No, you write an instructions in a file, like a recipe that helps you create or deploy servers in the cloud. Another key example is the computer reads this file and they set everything for you automatically. So once you use IAC, everything will just be deployed fast. The beauty about IAC is, if you are going to use 2 hours now to create SQLMI, so I think to deploy a storage account, there's this storage account. Let me show you this thing quickly. Let me just quickly show you this. SQL managed instance. Let's do SQLMI managed instance. Okay, so let's say you want to create an SQL instance now. For example, it takes about 2 to 5 hours to create some of these resources. It takes about, if you want to create an instance, some of this, it takes about 2 to 5 hours to create resources. But that is by clicking add. You're going to click next, 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 SQL instance, SQL register instance, which one of these? So by clicking next, 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 for example, now, you can write the script in the Azure portal using using an IAC script to be able to deploy this within minutes, just minutes. I mean, it makes life more easier. It's code reusable. It's easier to detect when there's an error in your script, if to point it and say, hey, I think I cannot read this file. You make mistake, you fail to put a comma or something. So it rapidly provision additional environment based on the standard configuration and build. That's what it does, right? So another key, let's say, for example, you want to bake 10 cakes, right? Manual way to bake cake. You have to bake this cake one by one, or you put a big large bowl and then put all the ingredients in one big bowl, and then you start opening the create segment pans into 10 places and start baking this cake one after the other. But in an IAC way, you just write down the script, which is the recipe, and then the machine will bake the cake, all 10 cake at once, all 10 cake at once, same way every time, without you going to do that. I have to put it this pan, I have to segment this pan, I have to make sure every cake, each of those cake are of the same quantity. I don't want to exceed. I mean, IAC will do all of that within a snap of a finger. We will do that very, very fast. So that's the difference between writing deployment. Most of us, we like using scripts. I mean, I don't want to be doing that, not myself, not so. CJ will not be trying that at this point in time, because some of you are still in the learning phase where you have to understand the basis concept, where, how, and when to use all of this. I mean, so that's that about infrastructure as a code. Let me quickly go over to the next slide so that I'll leave the room for demo session with Noso. Let me talk about Azure Resource Manager. We talked about this. So Azure Resource Manager and the Azure and the template itself, they are JavaScript object notion, which are called JSON files that can be used to create and deploy Azure infrastructure without having to write programming commands. Without having to write programming commands like declarative syntax, repeatable result, orchestration, modular files, built-in. So some of this code are already there. They are templates. So you just copy the templates, copy all of these methods, declarative syntax, repeatable result, copy all of this modular, all of this. You can just copy the templates, add what you want to add. If it is 10 resources you want to create, 20 resources, you add, instead of putting 0, you put 10. And then the template is already there. It will create all of that for you in a simple way, in a very simple way. And one of the good things about the Azure App template, there are special files, like I said, special files in Microsoft Azure that automatically set up and manage your cloud resources like servers, database, and network, right? So a key point is like your JSON that we just made mention, your JSON, which is JavaScript-oriented, JavaScript object notion files. They can be used to write different ARM templates, right? And they are machine readable. It's easy to, they are machine readable, and you can use them repeatedly as many times as you want. So that's that about Azure ARM templates. And then this is an overview of a bicep script. Please don't get scared. I'm asking you, all of you, please. So this bicep script is very easy it's machine readable. It's very easy to understand. So it's saying that this bicep script is going to create it on a particular location with this name, toy launch. That's the name of they want to create like a storage account. So the storage account name is what? Toy launch. And where are they going to create it? Which they're going to create it with this location. They're going to standard region LRS. Sorry, I've forgotten it. They're going to create it with this SKU name. The SKU is the store keeping unit. The kind of storage, is it version 2 or version 1? Access tiers. We're going to learn about all of this in our next session. During demo, you can ask session. So this is a typical bicep script. I mean, these scripts are online. If I go, you can get all of these templates online. Let me quickly show you where you can see your bicep script. So here you can just quickly search I just come to this portal and type Azure Bicep templates. Under the Azure Bicep template, I can see additional resources. It can give you different templates on each one of these references of templates, guides, syntax of resource managers, of ARM. You can see all of this. There are so many templates you can use, free, all for free. What do you want to do with this template? It explains all of this. So these are basic templates. You can see these are basic templates. This template is the same thing with what you get from here, right? You can see that you want to create a storage account is a template for you. You want to create a web application for using Bicep, is a storage, there's a template for you. All of these templates are free. You find them in learn.microsoft.com/Azure Resource Manager/template. You can see all of this. I'll drop the link here in case you don't have or you don't know how to find template. You can also search Azure Bicep template, and then you can see some of the templates here. It's giving you a link where you can click all of this and then go to those templates. I think that's that about that. Let's go to my next slide here. And then, oh, sorry. Azure monitoring tools. I mean, this is another thing I love. In fact, we do it every day. Myself and also CJ, whether you are a cloud infrastructure engineer or you are a DevOps engineer or you are an SRE, which is site reliability engineer, ensuring that there is high uptime availability in the organization and their resources. Like the sites, people.
Sorry to cut you short, but Leo has already asked 2 questions, and we've not answered any of them.
Okay,
just to go ahead and answer Leo. Leo, I will go with your question. Say, please, is web app cheaper than Kubernetes? Because you mentioned you can use either to host your application. So cheaper, I'll say yes, but it also depends on the SKU you pick. When SKU you pick, it basically depends on it depends on the quality of phone you pick, or quality of server you pick. If you choose the cheapest web app, of course it's cheaper than Kubernetes. But the beauty where I will advise people to go with Kubernetes for more, it depends on what you want to do. Do you want more hands-on? Do you want a situation whereby you want to define your route yourself? You want more control over how to build out your parts, then you should go with Kubernetes. But if you're just an entry level, if the requirements of this application is just, okay, hey, I just need a place to host my website, then you should go with web apps. That's one. The second question, you mentioned Azure Resource Manager template and Azure Bicep template. Are they one and the same thing? No, they're not the same thing. So Azure Resource Manager, ARM templates, Bicep templates, even Terraform, even all these are different types of infrastructure as a code tools. So you can use each one of them to deploy your resources. So for example, now after this class, now you can go and search for cloud engineer rules. Most cloud engineers will tell you, some will say, hey, in our organization, we use Bicep. So I expect you to know Bicep. In our organization, we use Terraform. I expect you to use Terraform. In our organization, we use ARM template. We expect you to know ARM templates. So that's what it is. So, but initially, Microsoft started with ARM templates. Then they moved to Bicep. They're pushing everything to Bicep, but still ARM templates for everything that is Bicep for. That's it.
Okay. Thank you so much for that question and answer. And again, please do not get scared about, because I know some of you are not, you don't like to see things like this. I say, why am I learning cloud if I'm going to be saying these things? Hey, you can learn cloud. These are the things we want to discuss after this session. You can also be in the cloud environment and become a data analyst to analyze data without not doing much of this, right? But please, these things don't get scared. We will define your path at the end of this session and then guide you on where do you want to belong at in the cloud environment. I know some of you don't like programming, some of you don't like mathematics, you don't want to see it and all of this. Please do not get scared, because I know at this point in time it's about getting intense and people are saying, hey, there are too many codes, zeros and ones, writing script. What is Bicep? How do I go about to Bicep and all of that? How do I learn? So please take it easy. Ask your questions. Once you don't understand, we will drill down to you and answer each one of those questions. Thank you so much. Let me move to my next slide. Azure monitoring tools. I mean, under the monitoring tools we are going to discuss is like, we're going to describe the purpose of Azure Advisor. how you can use the Azure Advisor, what you need to learn about Azure Advisor. We're going to describe the Azure Service Health to ensure that your infrastructures are running in a very clean slate, that no one is, you're not overusing high CPU usage. One of the system might crash, or somebody is trying to enter into your network to hack into your database to steal people's data and monetary millions of dollars and stuff like that. So your health helps it keeps your service health, ensure that every of your resources are in good shape. We are going to also describe the Azure Monitor, including the Azure Log Analytics, how to analyze different resources in the cloud. We are going to also talk about Azure alerts, Azure Monitor alerts, which means I used to use alert a lot, because I remember my last project, my last task I did for my company, the company where I work. I was outsourced for a different company where I was working for, and I guess US company. So they were having they have an application, a third-party application. That application is called PagerDuty. It's used to alert, check for anomaly detection, for example. And then whenever there's a high CPU usage, or there's a high storage, they are exhausting the storage within one of their storage resources in the cloud, the PagerDuty will send an alert. Or when there's a failure of a resources, is not a resources is not booting, VM is not coming on, they can't have access to it, you get an alert. So that is, it helps you to check for anomaly detection, right? Now, when the anomaly detection will send an alert to the stakeholders, people who are using that PagerDuty third party. But in Azure, it is easier to write a script in Bicep. I have so many codes I've deployed using that. It's easier to write a script in Bicep and set an alert rule, in the sense that you can set it to your phone, up to your phone, in the sense that you can be at home and then you can write a script to your phone and include your phone number, and then you can just be at home, maybe you're driving home, and then alerts, there's an anomaly detection, one of your resources, and all of that. I mean, these are tools that you also need to understand. It is very interesting environment to learn. And then we also talk about application insight, which is what I was showing you and all of that. So the Azure Advisor, as you all know, analyzes, deploy Azure resources, and makes recommendation. Remember, the key points there is it helps you make recommendation based on best practices to optimize Azure deployment, right? So recommendation, okay, so let me go. For example, now, your reliability as an SRE engineer, you see that the impact is, you don't have high impact, and then you have medium impact and zero low impact, which means 4 of your resources are going to medium impact. And when they go to medium impact, they'll go to high impact. With this yellow sign here, it shows that it's still within the range of either falling down or failing. If it happens, is giving you a recommendation. You can click all of that, and then I will leave that to know. So I'm just showing you all of that. I'm showing you from this pictorial information here. You can use that to check your recommendation. And the security side of it, the red, you see, you have 20 high impact, which means there's a risk, a serious risk, 218 impacted resources. Did you see that? It is dangerous. If Azure points this to you and you don't have a monitoring tool, now this is an advisor now. It's advising you that 218 of your 18 of your resources will be impacted in no time. So 20 of them are already on high impact, which means either they might be breached, hacked, failed, or something might happen to it. So please, you don't just, as a cloud engineer or as a DevOps engineer, or as an SRE, which is site reliability engineer, you ensure that the uptime, you have high availability uptime of your resources, so that people, and you also ensure that security and performance. See, now on the performance side, you can see that you are following all our performance recommendation, which means everything is green. It ticked it. There's a check mark there. It shows that performance, they are running fine. Nothing is slow, and they don't have high CPU usage and all of that. So this is what the Azure Advisor will advise you at some point to enable you to monitor, analyze your resources, and then make recommendation. Remember that key context. Make recommendation for you. So that's that. During our demo session, Nonso is going to show you all of this and how they work and how you can use that. If you see here under the Azure portal here, you can go to monitor. Under monitor, you will see advisor, alerts, metrics, right? You can see all of this. You can see them. You can see all of this here to monitor all your resources, logs, to check for logs, alerts. You can set an alert to service health, ensure they are running smoothly. The services are running, nothing is happening. So there is no services because I destroyed almost all of the resources. This was my testing environment. They were adjusting the money I have, I kept here, and they were using it on unrestrictedly, just like that. So I have to just stop people from. I used to give people access to my cloud services to test and do all kinds of technical hands-on, gain experience, understand how it works, and all of that. This is like a learning environment and stuff like that. So people were just abusing it. So I have to change my password and then delete the tenant. If you notice, every resource here is completely out. So this is it. Let me go back to my slide. Azure Service Health. I mean, when you talk about service health, is to ensure that your what's it called? You are not running temperature. You are not having what's it called? Azure Service Health is the collection of services that keep you informed of general Azure status, right? Service status that may impact you and specific resources status that is affecting you. Remember, we talk about Azure status, which is global view. Also, you're going to do all of that because I think in his own portal, he has so many resources on that. So he's going to drill that and show you the global view of health of all Azure resources across all regions. Service health, which focus on the view on only services that has to do with regions. That is if you are using the service, if you are experiencing or if your service is experiencing a problem within a particular region, it won't show up here. So that's it's going to show you all of that, how to navigate through that. Resource health, which helps you to tailor your actual Azure resources. It provides information about the health of your individual cloud services. The Azure Monitor, which is maximize your availability, performance, and application and services in the cloud by collecting, analyzing different telemetry from your cloud and ensure that your resources is up and doing. It will monitor it in terms of your application insight, give you an overview, keep logs, who is logging into the application, what are they doing in that application, what are they trying to achieve, automation actions, who deploys stuff, what kind of code did they write, Bicep, where did they host it from, and customize. You can customize your dashboard for your organization. If you work for a particular organization, you can customize it and you can create dashboard and to be able to analyze data. I mean, this is if you work for a data company first, if you work for a data company or you work as a data analyst, this is a very key part to learn. I mean, it's a very key process or environment to drill down and enjoy. You can integrate this into Power BI to be able to view logs, analyze visuals of data and stuff like that. This is another key if you want to be a data analyst, to analyze data, to say, hey, I think your company is running at a very high cost. The data is telling you that you need to slow down the amount of spending. And all. I mean, these are things that if you want to, for some of you who are aspiring analyst, I would say that this Azure Monitor is another key environment for you to learn. Then Azure Service, we'll talk about it. Okay, Azure Advisor. I think that's on this note. I would leave the demo session. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask your questions. And then on the demo part, I will leave my colleague to drill down and continue. And then we'll talk more on different pathways on how you want to become a DevOps or a cloud engineer. Thank you so much and have a great day. Over to you.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Dominic. I know that's a lot. Okay, but I'll just go ahead and share my screen now. So, well, if you have any questions, please go ahead. Please go ahead and share. So, if you have any questions, I think Leo is typing. Leo, go ahead. Um, can we all be cloud DevOps SRE? Of course, you can, but it's actually lots of steps on your own, lot of steps on your own, and a lot of materials. So I used to tell people, I used to tell people that one thing with DevOps is, one thing with cloud, one thing DevOps is continuous learning. So you always learn, you always read something, you always have to read something, because every day Microsoft is coming up new things. AWS is coming up with new things, GCP is coming up with new things, which are the three major clouds. You need to be able to read, so you can relent on previous knowledge. Although what we are teaching you now is like the foundations, right? Tomorrow, Azure Monitor can be called another thing, but at the end of the day, it's still monitoring. It's what it's doing in the background. So, for example, last week or last 2 weeks, we talked about IaaS, PaaS, SaaS. These are the three foundation of cloud models. Everything falls under that one. So you need to understand the foundations. We can be it, but I won't lie to you and say, hey, okay, after this 3 weeks training or 6 weeks training or 7 weeks training, you automatically become a DevOps engineer. No, it requires lots of practical, it requires lots of experience. That's it. Before I go over to show you how to create a free account, I would basically start with this. I want to start with this. Basically, I want to show you guys subscription paths. So presently, for the last 3 weeks, what we're looking at is AZ900. AZ900, basically cloud introduction, Azure fundamentals. So Azure fundamental is like the basics of if you want to do anything in Azure. So I know towards the end it got a little bit technical when we talk about bicep, ARM templates, Azure CLI. But at the end of the day, if you remember what we started with today, like what is cloud, what is SaaS, what is IaaS, what is PaaS, we all made the joke with the fufu joke, the restaurant joke. That's the basics. So for Azure subscription part, first of all, we expected to first of all do AZ900. So for AZ900, if you want to go the infrastructure side, so you want to be a cloud administrator, you want to be you want to be a DevOps admin, you want to be a platform engineer, you expected to go to do 104, right? But if you're a developer, right, let's say you write scripts, you're a React developer, you're a Python developer, you don't care too much about the infrastructure side, but you still want to build on top Azure resources, you expect to go and do Azure 204. So it's supposed to move from don't do 104 and do 204, right? So, but if you are a developer and you also want to be, so sometimes when it comes to being a DevOps engineer, there are some development side, there are some infrastructure side. So, for example, I work in some companies whereby I was a DevOps engineer, but some of us are DevOps engineer and we say developers that turn to DevOps engineer, and some are system engineers that turn to DevOps engineer. So a system engineer that turns to DevOps engineer is more inclined to the infrastructure side. So that means the person will go for 104, then is the 400. If the person is a developer that wants to be a DevOps engineer, he's likely going to go this path from 204 to 400, right? So, but if you want to be an architect like CJ, so CJ is an architect in Azure, what the path you're going to go is after your AZ900, you scale up, you do AZ104, which is what we're going to enter next. After that, you do AZ305. That's your path to Azure Architect. If you want to do networking, as they say, you're a networking guru, you're a networking expert, you're expected to do AZ900, do AZ104, then do AZ700, do AZ720. So that means you're a network architect. So, for example, now, I don't know for some of you, initially I had CCNA certification because I wanted to be a networking network engineer. So if I'm in that field today, I want to be a networking expert in the cloud. So the things I'm going to go for AZ900, AZ104, AZ700. See, I want to do security. I want to do security. I'm into cybersecurity. I love cybersecurity. What am I going to do? I'm going to start with AZ900. Then from AZ900, I'm going to do SC900, which is another introduction to cloud for the security side. Then after that, I'm going to go through whether I do SC100 or I do AZ500 or I do a SC200 or I do or AC300 or AC400. These are the several options into the security district. But if I want to go towards, let's say I want to go towards data, I'm a data guy, for example, I'm a data scientist, I'm a data analyst, I'm a data architect, right? So first thing as I advise that I start with AZ 900. After that, I will do DT 900. Then either I go with 302 with DP 100, DP 203, or DP 300 or DP 500. These are the routes. So for example, most of these will data about, okay, are you using Databricks? Are you using Databricks? Or are you using what's the new one? Fabric. Are you using Fabric? So this are certifications that covers it. If you're an AI engineer, you want to be into AI. So first of all, you do AZ 900, which is what we have done now to cover the basics. Then after that, you go to AI 900, which is basically with deep, still basics, but more about more things around AI, more around AI services. Then after that, you do AI 102. Azure AI 102. So if you are into hybrid, so for example, you heard when Dominic talked about Azure Arc. Azure Arc is simply, okay, hey, all the beautiful features I have in Azure, how can I make use of it to my on-premise services? Considering that my on-premise services are being managed by me, not by Microsoft. Microsoft say, hey, okay, I have a tool called Azure Arc that is going to sit on top and help you to manage your Azure. So all you have to do is just simply these are certifications you are covered this. That's you from your AZ 900, you do AZ 104, then you go the route of going the AZ 102, which is I think is if I'm not mistaken, this is about virtual network, or I'm not exactly sure. Then you go with AZ 140, AZ 800, which is networking, also hybrid networking, or AZ 600. So Azure basically covers all paths, or the path you want to follow. But the AZ 900 is like the basic path. Is that okay? I think I've lost you guys. Is there anyone still in the class, or is it just me in the class?
again, I can let me quickly chip in. For those who are trying to become a data scientist, or some of you don't like to write code, you want to be, or data analyst kind of, some of you don't really like to write codes, you like to analyze data, visualize data, and then explain how those data works. If you are interested, I think we'll also talk more about this drill down. I will allow also to finish with the, what's it called? The demo session for other things that we discussed. And then if you also want to become a DevOps engineer, if you are passionate about it, from the map he also shared now, the career paths on which of, if you want to become a cloud engineer or anything at all. I mean, we'll also talk about this in the in our group chat. Feel free to ask questions. After this session, please communicate with me on the group chat, and then we'll discuss further, and possibly have like a one-on-one session, advisory, and all of that. Okay, over to you, sir.
All right. So sorry, guys, back to this. Okay, so one of the things that Dominic mentioned is about cost. You mentioned cost. Okay, how do we know what we are using? You mentioned, okay, how do I know what is using what? You talk about cost management. You talk about pricing calculator, right? I think he showed you guys a bit of pricing calculator. So what I'm showing you guys is now how Azure calculates things resources in your cloud. So this is my own portal. For example, now, if I go to the subscription and go to cost analysis, I can see all the things consuming money in my environment. So for example, now what I can see that storage is consuming $14. Backup is $7. I have a virtual machine backup running. Someone asked a question about backup. I think it was Helen. So I have a backup running for a server that I have in Azure. I have a virtual machine. This is what the virtual machine have cost this month so far. This is the network cost. This is the cost of Azure Monitor. This is cost of bandwidth. This is the cost of Windows Defender. So I can actually see the cost. So if I look at this, what is forecasting? It's forecasting that, hey, that this guy is going to it's going to cost me at the end of the 1 month billing cycle, which is my own starts from 15th and ends 15th. So 18th to 18th, I can see that it's ending 18th of October. See the billing cycle here. So it's basically telling me that, hey, I'm going to go more than $100. So it's going to be 111.0. And I think this is going to be an issue for me. So by resource group, I can also see by resource group what is using cost. If you guys remember, last week I created a VM, a resource group with VM called John RG. I I don't think I removed that resource. If you look at this here, see John RG is costing me $2 so far, almost close to $3. So I want to use that to do an example now. Let me drill down, to see what is costing me. It's saying that virtual network in that is costing me $1 to go to $2 so far. The virtual network is 0.73. The storage is 6. This is what is costing me so far. Remember the region I put it in US East, and resource group name is John. What I want to do now, this is basically about cost. I can set cost alert. Cost alert is basically say, hey, okay, so like what Dominic taught us earlier. I said, I want to be alerted if I have $100 to spend every month, right? I have $100 to spend every month, and this guy is telling me that the forecast is 111, and I want a situation whereby when it gets to $50, please alert me. So maybe if I lost myself, I've been doing things I've forgotten. So if I lost myself, I want to be alerted. They say after 2 weeks, alert me, or even not after 2 weeks. Once I pass 50% of my budget, which is $50 in this case, alert me so that I can quickly come and look at it. Okay, imagine now, I budgeted $100 to utilize in my cloud for a month, and by third of the month, I've already used $50. That means there's no way I can have resources running from till month end. So what am I going to do? I need to scale down. So here I'm coming and create an alert. I say this alert is saying, okay, hey, please, anomaly. I can say anomaly. If something, so if there's a spike suddenly, I can say just alert me. But I don't want to use this. What I want to use is go to budget alert. So sorry, this is budget alert. I'm going to go to budget alert, the budget alert. So I can say, hey, okay, alert, screen alert. I go to the alert, it's $50, alert 50. So there's no space. It said nothing. Microsoft basically, which about this is going to tell you there shouldn't be any space. So billing month, yes, it should be my billing month. Then I think budget amount. I don't want anytime it passes $50, I want it to alert me. I can go to next. I can say, okay, what do I want to alert conditions? Actual. If budget 50% of my budget, 50%. Action group. I don't have an action group. I need to create an action group. Action group is basically who do I want this alert to forward it to? I come and say I want it to forward it to non-suit date. The email address needs to be unique. Of course, it's unique. What do you mean? Okay, we're not. Okay, and it wants me to create an action group, which is basically shouldn't be an issue. Yeah, of course. So what this is going to be is once I pass 50%, it's going to send me an email say, hey, you've passed 50% of your last year's budget. One other thing I want to quickly show us is what Dominic taught us, which is basically logs, resource logs. Let's say, for example, that this is the VM I created last week. I don't want someone to delete this resource group. I'm going to create what we call a resource log on it. So if I come here and do logs, logs, I can come and create a new log, add a new log, and say, hey, delete log. There's read only log like delete log. I'm saying, okay, do not delete. Delete. Can say contacts, Helen from the cloud team, Helen from the cloud team. If I click this okay now, I'm going to create a lock on this resource group now. So let's say wait for 5 minutes, I come back, coming back like this, I'm going back here, I'm saying, okay, let me try to delete this now. Remember, I have permission to create a resource group. I'm the one that created the resource group. I'm trying to delete it now. If I try to delete it now, I'm put John.rg. Let me see what it will tell me. Does it delete? No. See, the resource group is locked and can't be deleted. Click here to manage the locks for this device. So what it's telling me now, there's a lock on it. So I have permission to delete it, but because of resource locks, I'm not able to delete it. That's one of the hardest how you protect your environment. What else is our friend teach us today? It taught us about service Azure Advisor. Azure Advisor is a very fantastic thing. Azure Advisor is Microsoft saying, hey, okay, we want you to optimize. We want you to make use of your environment. We don't want you to waste money. We don't want you to waste resources. We don't want you to waste. So it could be things around cost. It could be about operations. Could be things around management. So, for example, now Microsoft is scanning your environment and advising you on the best way to manage your environment. They're looking at this and say, okay, hey, go this route. Go this route. For example, if you go to advisor, for example, they tell me cost. They say, hey, you're following all of your cost recommendations. Hey, Igbo man, what do you expect? We're always concerned with money, right? Security, I'm also following all of that. So that means I'm following everything there. But look at the reliability. It's telling me, not following things on reliability. Okay, let me recheck their recommendations. Microsoft is advising me now. They are not forcing me, they are advising me. Saying, okay, you are in case of reliability, you are not following the all recommend things. Saying, hey, okay, use capability for VM. They're saying, okay, they notice that one VM is running 247. They say, I can actually reserve this VM. So that way, these two VMs, I say I can reserve them so I can get more. All right. So that means this capacity VM will be available for me, capacity reservation, just like somebody buying a seat. So for example, look at it now, we all know football club. So it's like saying you are buying a season ticket. You're buying a season ticket. That means this seat is permanently reserved for you. Instead of every day, Friday, you are looking for to know whether that seat is open. So the market saying, hey, okay, you can actually reserve this for forever, for 1 year or 2 years, depending on one, 2 years. They're also saying, okay, migrate to this for better. They are advising me to move to a better VM. So Microsoft is looking at my environment and say, hey, look at this. Helen mentioned backup earlier. And I said, so even so the account has sub delete, which is like your recycle bin. So me, I didn't enable it because, of course, I told you guys, the more features you enable, the more cost you incur. This guy is telling me, okay, enable sub delete to protect your blob data. So if I want to protect my blob data, I can actually enable sub delete. So they want me to enable sub delete on this, but I don't actually care about this. I can actually go ahead and delete this to be precise. I can delete this, but I can do that later. I think this is empty. Let me see. Yeah, it's empty. So because I'm not being charged. Okay. What's running there? My Outlook is being backed up here. Okay. But no worries. So that's just it. That's just your advisor is basically looking at your environment and is advising you how to manage your environment. Okay. What else am I missing? Okay. The last thing I wanted to share, but I want somebody else to do that because I already have an Azure account. Microsoft already know me. I need somebody. So for students, you can use Azure for students to request for subscription. So let me just paste that here. So to get for subscription, they're going to give you $100 and you get some free services. If you're not a student, you can use this. I don't know whether somebody wants to share their screen so that we can just basically test it out. Please know that when you're creating this one, they require you to put your credit card. So you need to be careful of what you're deploying. That means you cannot go haywire. After deploying, you need to delete it. Because initially they'll give you $200 to play with. That $200 can finish in an hour if you go and choose a high skill VM. It's very important that you know this. It's very important that you know this. But beyond this, I want to introduce guys something. If you don't want to create this, there's what we call Microsoft Learn.
Learn.Microsoft.
Yeah, is 900. So I think this is it. Let me show you guys. So these are, if you go through these three modules are actually all the things that we've taught you guys so far. So part of the things you get here is, you see, you can see this curriculum, what is cloud computing. At the end, there is an assessment. And the assessment will actually help you to basically to understand. But beyond that, some part of it, not in this one, so part of it gives you a lab environment for you to get to create things. So they'll give you a free account for you to use to create things. So you can use this if you don't want to, if you're very careful, you don't want to mess with your money, you can actually go through this model. My advice is that you go through all of this. go through all of this. This is just for AZ 900. This is the first, what we thought the first day. This is what we thought the second day. We see the chat now, and this is what we thought today. So you can go through all of them, just take them step by step. If you have questions, ask questions on the chat, on the group. I might not answer immediately, Dominic might not answer immediately, but before the end of the day, I must get 5-10 minutes to answer you. But it's really important that even if you want to be a data scientist, you want to be a data engineer, you want to be an AI engineer, you want to be a DevSecOps engineer, dev security and dev engineer in Microsoft, you're expected to know 900, and this covers it. This is like the fundamentals. Okay. I don't know whether anybody, so I don't know. We basically have 3 minutes to 8 p.m. I understand it's a weekend. I don't want to take off for a weekend. We can, if you have some time, you can just use the second link. This particular one, I just put a like on it to request for subscription, because it gives you $200. Use it to do a test on your environment. If you have any further issues regarding this, you can just ping me or ping on the chat, and we can respond to you instead of you being online. Is that okay?
Again, if remember, this is like an everyday concept in your head. If you are a cloud engineer or a DevOps engineer, or be it anything that you use in the cloud, ensure that if whatever you deploy for testing purpose, please instantly delete them.
After you're done, yes. Because you forget.
You're done testing it that minute. If you use 2 hours to test all the resources, immediately after you deploy to test to ensure that everything is fine, you are able to deploy it, you are good to go. Please and please and please delete those resources. Imagine you work for an organization as a cloud engineer and you deploy stuff for testing. I mean, it's a culture as a cloud engineer for you to invite into that kind of culture, to be able to delete those resources we don't use any longer. And idle resources will keep accumulating money in the cloud, on your name or in the organization name. So resources you don't use that are idle, that you're using for testing purpose, as soon as you're done, keep it as a habit. It's your daily life as a cloud engineer. Delete. Just delete. Keep to be able to save cost, and then keep your environment safe. Because sometimes you might create a VM now, and you are using to deploy, to log into, you are testing cybersecurity, you are using to deploy stuff, you are running Kali Linux on it, you are happy. You are deploying stuff to be able to monitor people's instances and all of that. You are happy about it. And one day you forgot about that resources. Remember that resource will continue to accumulate costs. If you are running the testing for testing purpose, please go ahead to delete. Do not keep them. Once you are not using them, don't keep an idle resources. Again, it can cost you breach. If you are deploying VM and putting it on a public IP address or public service, it is very risky. Instantly, before 5-10 minutes or 2 hours, 1 hour from that time, they will hack into that VM. So be very careful once you're creating resources, and you have to be mindful of what you create. Once you don't use anything, please go ahead and delete. Thank you. It's a culture. Put it in the back of your mind. It's once you don't use, don't keep in the cloud. Please go ahead and delete. Okay.
All right. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to the end of class. You're going to have another session next week, or we'll go deep into 104. If you have any question during the week, please, I expect you to ask. And thank you. CJ, anything you want to say? Anything?
Yes. About the fundamentals with AZ 100 or 104. So often is that if you want to take if you plan to take the learning, we can support you as well. So we can plan like learning together, kind of to prep you guys before you take the exam. Exam prep. So we can offer that as well. So whenever you're ready, just let us know, then we can organize that as part of this training, the kind of cohorts in that aspect.
Again, sorry, let me add up. Also, you have the Microsoft Ignite coming up next month. I think November 17. So the Ignite is to help you understand how Azure works. to get other concepts, what is new that is coming to the Microsoft Azure environment. And also you get an opportunity to try the Cloud Skill Challenge. The Cloud Skill Challenge helps you for a place where you can use Sandbox. Sandbox is like a free tool from Microsoft. You can use it to test run and deploy, do anything you want to do to see how it works, right? You enjoy all of those benefits. And then you take the Cloud Skill Challenge where you can also get a free voucher to be able to take the Microsoft Azure 900. So some of you who are already written those exams and you just want to get the experience is good. But if you want to still further drill down to get the Azure 104 to become Azure administrator, or you want to become Azure security, a cybersecurity expert, all of these vouchers, you get it through the Cloud Skill Challenge on the Ignite day. Please do feel free. I will drop the link on the Microsoft Ignite, and then you can go as well to before you join the prep session for your exams. We can also help you on that as well. I'll put that in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You have a lovely evening.
and thanks. Enjoy the rest of your evening, guys.
Bye.
Yeah, we'll call it a quit.
Thank you, guys. So pleasure. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good
Have
night.
a lovely weekend.
Yeah.